Today is all about modern mom problems, and you are not going to want to miss this discussion. I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Welcome, guys. I am so excited to bring you today's guest. Tara Clark is someone who I met at a conference a couple of years ago. We've stayed in touch, and I recently recorded an episode of her podcast, and so I invited her to join me on mine, and she is just phenomenal. She has got such great mom insights. Tara Clark, if you are not familiar with her, is the founder of Modern Mom Probs. She is an author, speaker, content creator, podcaster, mental health advocate. She launched her Instagram account in 2016. She has since built an enormous and valued community, and she has solidified her place online as a humorous and trusted voice in the parenting space. She's been recognized as a mental health champion by the Mental Health Coalition, been featured in prominent media, including the Washington Post, ABC News, NBC News, Today, MotherlyParents.com, Scary Mommy, you name it. She is the author of Modern Mom Probs, and she is, of course, the host of the Modern Mom Probs podcast. And y'all, we have got a great discussion for you. We had so much fun, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. So let's dive in. Tara, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be chatting. You were on my show. I was on your show. We're going to be talking about all this stuff.
I love it. So I want to know, so you have got, your fabulous podcast, Modern Mom Probs. Tell me how you got there. Like, what's your origin story? Now, I'll preface this by saying, I always ask, when I have stepmoms on the show, I always ask them their stepmom origin story. You're not a stepmom, but you've got some blended stuff in your family.
I do.
So give me your origin story. Tell me how you got here.
Yeah. Okay. You want the full origin story? No, I'm just kidding. I was born in 1980. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old. No, I'll fast forward several years past that. I started Modern Mom Probs in 2016. I was living in New York City. I had my son, and I was so lonely, living in one of the biggest cities in the world, biggest city in America. And I was looking for a way to connect with other moms. And so at the time, I started the account. It was called NYC Mom Probs. And I was joking about and talking about living in New York City. And then at the end of 2016, so now it's 10 years we'll be living in New Jersey. We moved to New Jersey, from New York City to New Jersey. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm having an existential crisis because I don't have New York City mom problems anymore. So the beginning of 2017, I changed the name to Modern Mom Problems, Modern Mom Probs. And the account just absolutely took off from there. And because everyone was like, oh yeah, I have modern mom problems. Yeah, I get that. That totally tracks. So that was it. And really when I got started, it was more about making jokes and talk about first world problems. And then over time, the account and my career has evolved to talking about anything that falls underneath the umbrella of a modern mom problem. So whether that's maternal mental health or financial issues or something funny or our kids getting mad that we chose the wrong sippy cup, to me, all of that stuff falls underneath the modern mom problem.
I love that. And I love that you started it from a place of wanting to connect with other moms, because I think as stepmoms, we are kind of used to feeling alone, right? A lot of us don't know other stepmoms or don't have anybody to talk to about this kind of thing. And I think that we don't necessarily think about moms feeling alone, right? So I love that you brought that perspective into it. And I'm guessing that when you started, and probably today, you have a lot of moms that come in feeling alone, like nobody understands what they're going through, and they really identify with what you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that loneliness and parenting in silos is one of today's modern mom probs. So whether it's stepmoms or not, loneliness is definitely a major issue when it comes to modern parenting.
It really is. And I think, I know I talk about this a lot with stepmoms, how much pressure we put on ourselves, but I also think that's like a woman thing and a mother thing because
Yeah.
like we really feel like we have to have it all together. I remember I may have told you about this on your podcast and now I don't remember, but the first birthday party that I threw for my stepdaughter was like this elaborate, and I had put all of this pressure on myself to do everything perfectly. And like, I felt guilty if I missed a soccer game or if I missed, you know what I mean? And I'm like, there's just no need to be so hard on ourselves. Why are women so hard on themselves? That's a really big question.
That is a big question. And yet another modern mom problem. See,
I know, right?
I told you there's so many. No, I was kidding. But we have so much pressure to serve the children the right food, speak to them in the right way. And that obviously is super important. But I'm saying there's so many different things, watching the right shows and doing the right thing all the time. There's this concept of the perfect mother myth, right? That you have to be the perfect mother if you do X, Y, and Z, and you have to serve all organic food all of the time. The food has to be made from scratch without any additives, and you are collecting your own chickens in the backyard or not chickens, own eggs in the backyard, and you're milking the cows and this whole facade, if you will, to create what people are saying is like, that's how you have to become a perfect mom for the perfect family. And that's just simply not true. And so whether it's social media and even before social media, because, people put a lot of onus on social media of like, oh, this is why moms feel a certain way. It really predates that. Yes, it is in our hand and we see it all the time and we're constantly being bombarded with these messages. But think about magazines. When we were growing up, there was Good Housekeeping and Better Homes and Gardens and all of those types of things that our moms and our grandmothers also felt compelled to try to live up to that standard. So this is not something new. It's just something that continues to be perpetuated.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a societal construct than a social media construct, right? I mean, it's a bigger thing. I mean, I think it's so challenging. Like some of these narratives and stereotypes that get perpetuated, amongst all of us. And whether it's like the mean girl sort of, classroom mom dynamic, right? Where, they
totally.
And you do feel so judged for not, and I do think, I think it is a larger issue of, society, not just social media, but I would love your thoughts on this. This is maybe a spicy topic, but what do you think about the whole trad wives thing? Like, that seems
Oh yeah, we could talk about that all the time. I mean, I was sort of insinuating that without blatantly saying that when I was saying about like
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the thing. I have friends who have argued, or I know people who have argued sort of on both sides of that, where people are saying, but there's nothing wrong with living a soft life and wanting to be with your family. And I totally understand that. The issue, and that I've also seen argued on the other side, is it's the lack of choice. And it's sort of that women who are these trad wife influencers who have a very big status, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or on YouTube, they are making a boatload of money from their accounts and from their website and from selling merch and different things like that. And they're giving the illusion that this is effortless, that they don't have a team of people supporting them, that they're literally just by themselves. And at the same time that they are collecting the eggs and milking the cows and taking care of their 6 children effortlessly. And people don't understand, the average person doesn't understand that there is a team of people, that this is a major company putting forth this messaging and these products. And so I think that's a big part of the rub that people are feeling like, well, I can't live up to this expectation. And you're like, yeah, you can't live up to this expectation because maybe she has a team of people that are helping her and you really are truly doing it by yourself. And so it's not necessarily yet another fair expectation for moms and stepmoms to live up to.
Yeah, it really is unfair, right? Because like they are perpetuating that this is, an easy thing to do. And then you have moms out there who are really struggling, just trying to get their kid up and dressed for school and then comparing themselves to this like idealistic, online narrative that there's no way they're going to reach, it's just so unfair. How can we?
And it's interesting on my podcast, I'll get to that in a second about how we could sort of parse through that.
Yeah.
On my podcast, I always ask my guests, what do you think the biggest modern mom problem is today? And it used to almost be like 8 out of 10. Lately, I've been getting some different answers, but let's just say 8 out of 10 people say social media comparison.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge issue. I mean, I see it with the comparison. I also see it with the misinformation. And, we see it really acutely in the stepmom world because there are now more and more people getting into this space, which is amazing. Like, I love seeing people online talking about stepfamilies. But a lot of people online talking about stepfamilies, and I'm sure this is true in the mom space too, they are kind of spouting off about their own personal experience and then calling themselves a coach, but not having the kind of research-backed training or the actual tools and like leading people down, kind of a dangerous path. I don't know. Do you see that in the mom space?
Oh, yeah. I see that all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is a common thing. I am happy to say that I have been... A lot of my friends and fellow content creators are certified therapists. They're licensed therapists. So for them, like, that's wonderful. But occasionally you do see just people spouting out, you can't drink this, you can't eat that, you shouldn't, give your children X, Y, and Z. And they don't have necessarily any real training on that. So yes, I do see that.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people, I'm like, whoever you're going to listen to, just like check them out a little bit and like make sure that they've got some training in what they're talking to you about, because there's so much noise out there.
Yeah, there is. And it's hard because parents are in a fight or flight survival mode where they're looking for answers. They're trying to get out of this survival mode. So sometimes they're just listening to either the first person that they hear or the loudest voice. And sometimes the loudest voice is not necessarily the most trained one. So 100%. People have to be very careful.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so I want to flip the script a little on you because when I was on, you asked me the question about what, I think that today's biggest modern mom problem is. What do you think it is?
Gosh, this is like a topic, obviously, that is so close to my heart. So there are so many I know. There's just so many. It's like, where do I even begin? I do think social media comparison is a big one. I also think, to your point, that information overload and misinformation overload is a really big problem right now, too. So it's hard for the average person to wade through all of this glut of information that we're just soaking in each day. And so you're like, well, what's true and what's not true? And should I listen to her because she's louder or has a bigger following or whatever it is? And so that's very, very tricky. Another one that I often say is having a lack of an in-person village. That's really hard in today's world for step families and not step families. And so that's challenging to navigate. So building your own village is tricky. Yeah, there's several of them. Like I said, I could go on and on and on, but I do think that comparison is such a big thing because nowadays we know what everyone's thinking. And there was a time where you weren't inside everyone's brain, and now we're always just in everyone else's brains. And like, I don't know if that's good or bad.
I think I know if it's good or bad. I suspect.
I have an idea,
I have some thoughts, yeah.
And so that's definitely part of it too. There was a time where you just think, maybe you should keep those things to yourself, Uncle Bill.
Maybe we don't have to share every thought. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, so speaking of like information bombardment, and this is maybe a little bit of a side tangent, but I'm curious your thoughts. So I know you recently re-aired podcast that you had done, I think last year, on talking to your kids about all the big scary things going on in the world.
Yes.
I was kind of sorry to see that you had to re-air that, but like there are still so many big scary things going on in the world right now.
I know. That's what's terrible. So that one actually came out. This is what makes me sad thinking about it. That came out in 2023. So that's a 3-year-old episode.
Yeah. That's so relevant.
I put that one out. It was around, unfortunately, there were school shootings. I think it might have been one of the school shootings in Texas. And I had this other woman on. She's a podcaster. Her name is Tracy Leeds Kaplan. And we were talking about how to speak with your children around big news stories. And then lately, obviously, we've been having a lot of big news stories as well. And so it is challenging to navigate that especially when you have small children. When you have older children, it's easier to broach the topic and to speak about it in an age appropriate way. It's much more challenging when your children are smaller.
Well, and I think when, they may hear things at school, or maybe, I think unfortunately, for the kids that are in Minnesota, like, are they scared that somebody's going to come and take them away? Like, there are just so many fears that, kids just shouldn't have to worry about. And I know that list is really long right now, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. I have a friend who lives in the suburbs of Chicago, and her daughter is scared that ICE is going to take her at school.
And kids just shouldn't have to be scared at school of shooters, of ICE, of anything. Like, they should be able to go and just be kids, and
Absolutely.
And I feel like in many communities in the US, you kind of get a false sense of isolation from those issues. I mean, we live in rural Maine, and I feel like, okay, well, we're probably safe from that here, but I don't know that we are.
But you don't know. I mean, that's the thing too. Like, when you think like Minnesota, you're like, oh, I don't know. But then obviously it's really, at this point, unfortunately, it's the epicenter of a lot of this issues with ICE. That's terrible.
So, I mean, what do you think is the best way to handle it when your kid comes home and there's some big news story that's been talked about at school and they're scared? And, what's the best thing you can say to them as a mom or a stepmom?
Well, again, it depends. Number one, it has to be age appropriate, right? So you're not going to speak to a 5-year-old the same way that you'll speak to your 15-year-old. So that starts that. But I would start by saying, did you speak about X, Y, and Z at school? Or did you hear about X, Y, and Z at school? And then they may say yes, or they may say no. And you could lead into, do you have any questions about that? I always love to lead with curiosity.
I love that approach. Yes.
Thank you. So I lead with curiosity to get their understanding, and then to fill in the blanks for them. For instance, just last week, my 13-year-old came home from school, and unfortunately, there was the situation going on in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. And I said to him, I was sort of getting a temperature check on how much he knew and what he didn't know. And he said, yeah, I saw it on YouTube, because he looks at YouTube shorts. And so he got the information from there. And so then I said, oh, so then I started asking him questions, and then he knew so much more than I thought he did, that he was surprising me, because I was like, oh, he knows everything. It was like as if he sat and, watched CNN, and he knew boop, 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 like all the stories. And so
they're really well informed. I mean, it's staggering, really, because they have access to so much more than we had at that age,
Exactly. So I was taken back at how well versed he was in what was going on there. And then I was pleased, because then part of me was like, oh, well, now I don't have to explain everything. But if he has questions, right, because it's harder to explain something from scratch versus if he watched the news and then he could sort of report back what he found or what he heard. So then I just let him know that I was there if he needed to talk with me about it. And if he had strong feelings, then he could share, and that I'm always there and I'm always around to have him talk to me. Yeah. That's how that conversation went. But it was interesting, because I was hyping myself up. When you're like, as a parent, you have to like hype yourself up sometimes. I was hyping myself up to have this conversation, only to find out that he knew everything about it. So I was like, oh, okay.
It's so good to ask that question, right? Because they are being bombarded with so much information. And if it doesn't occur to them to raise it with you as a parent, their brains aren't fully developed. So we don't really know what they're thinking about all of this stuff that they're getting bombarded with, right? I mean, it's really...
Exactly.
I mean, I think that's the best possible scenario, is that like you kind of broach it with them and they're like, yeah, I know, I'm good. I understand,
Yes, that's exactly what happened. And I was surprised, because I thought that I was going to have to start from scratch and then walk him through the whole thing. And he was like, oh no, he's like, I saw it on YouTube and we spoke about it at school and this and that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, let me know if you have any questions. I'm here for you if you need me.
Yeah, which I think is the most important part, that like they know that they have a safe person that they can come and talk to, whether it's mom, stepmom, dad, stepdad, whoever that adult is.
Absolutely.
But they know they've got somebody. I had a similar experience with my stepdaughter when I think she was maybe in 7th grade or something. We had a neighborhood get together, and one of the Fairfax County special task force people came in, and he was telling us about how these predators are going online pretending like they're young boys. They're getting 13-year-old girls to send them nudes. And then he was talking about how then those will get distributed, throughout school and all this stuff. And so of course I ran home and I was like, we need to talk about this. Like, I need to make
Hype
sure that you're
yourself
not
up.
doing any of this stuff, and I used the approach that he suggested, which is, so, I know you're not taking any pictures of yourself that are inappropriate, but like, you would never want, your dad to see a naked picture of you, right? Oh my gosh, no. And what about the principal? You wouldn't want him to see that, right? No, 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 no. Okay, well, so don't send nudes.
That was a great way to approach it. Like, high five. That was a great way to do it.
She rolled her eyes and she was like, we hear all about this at school. And so, but it was one of the, it was another example of like, I'm so glad I raised it and she already knew it. But like, it's good that, they know that they can have those conversations.
Exactly that. They need to know that home is a safe place to be able to speak about these things, that it's not going to be swept under the rug. It's going to be addressed, but in a safe space where they could feel confident to ask questions, and we could be confident enough to be curious about, their thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, totally. Because I don't remember, you and I are not that far apart in age. Like growing up, I don't remember having any of those conversations.
Oh my God,
parents.
no. No, I could promise that. And just recently, it was the 40th anniversary of the Challenger explosion.
Yes, I remember that very well.
Yes. And so I was in kindergarten and I was 5 years old, like 5 going on 6. And our teacher came in from lunch and she was crying. And we were like, Mrs. Hooting, why are you crying? And then she explained it to us. And then we were crying because she was crying. And then we went home and the only thing on television the whole rest of the day and the whole rest of that week was just news coverage of that.
Yeah.
And so that is and was my first memory of a major news story. But I'm sure, I don't think my mom addressed it or spoke about it. Like we had the TV on because that was the only thing that was on. And that was
replaying it over and over and over again.
Over again. The trauma of that was just,
now looking back and thinking about that, it's like, well, that's quaint compared to what's out there on YouTube for the kids these days,
That is absolutely, that is absolutely true. But yeah, just the replay was traumatic. A lot. But there were no real proper conversations. If anything, I think my kindergarten teacher probably sat with us and she spoke in the way that I would have assumed. But no, I definitely didn't get any of that at home. I could promise you that.
No, it's super traumatic. I was actually home from school. I was in 6th grade. I was home from school sick, and I grew up in Northeast Florida. And I'm sure I was watching some game show or something, and they interrupted.
You're probably watching The Price is Right.
Probably The Price is Right. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
like 100% of those Price is Right. And they interrupted it, and I went outside because we could always see when the shuttles went off. We could see them go over.
Yeah.
And you could see it. And it was horrific. And the news coverage and everything. But we never talked about it after the fact. Like you said, like it just was sort of, well, we'll just put that in the jar and screw that lid on real tight.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. Were you around in Florida when the Columbia exploded? Because then that was like only about 25 years ago.
No, maybe. I was living in DC.
Oh, okay.
I was living in DC. But
that one was sad because I remember watching that one on television live. Yeah. See, that one I was watching live because I was like 20 something, and I was home watching that on one morning, and I could not believe that. And then it was like the trauma re-triggered of the Challenger all over again. It was horrible.
Yeah,
but I feel like we went off on a tangent. I'm sorry about that.
I know, it's okay. No, but I think it's all really interesting how parenting in so many ways stays the same from generation to generation, but in a lot of ways feels really different now.
Yes, I think we are making a real effort. We as parents and step-parents are making a real effort to connect with our children in a way that our folks simply didn't connect with us.
I think that's right. And I think they didn't know to connect with us. Like, I don't think that it was that generation didn't want to. I think it just didn't. Nobody talked to them about it. It's sort of this generational,
I think that's exactly what it is. Mothers, and my grandmother would send the kids out all day, like from not during school, obviously, but let's say in the summer or during winter break from the morning until the afternoon. And so they were gone for 6 hours a day. And then they would only just come back to eat dinner, take a bath and go to bed. And that was it. Right. And so it was a very different connection than we have. And so that's what my mother learned. And then so her behavior was different. But I think each generation is trying to do, and I'm using this in quotes, do the best they can with what they have. And I'm using air quotes there. And And we're really learning and making real efforts. And I'm proud of our generation for whether it's breaking cycles of negative behavior or connecting with our kids in a different way that maybe we didn't necessarily have. So pat ourselves on the back for that one.
Absolutely. I think that is a wonderful note to end on. This has been I could talk to you all day. This has been such a great conversation.
I love this. We could talk about all kinds of stuff. We didn't even talk, it's funny. I had two different stepmothers. We didn't even talk about that next time.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So I need to have you back and we need to talk about that for sure. And actually, before we go, I would love to know real quick, how did having two stepmothers, how did that influence your parenting?
The second one, I was an adult. So I was already a parent at that point, so it didn't. But the first one, I would do exactly the opposite of what she did. So I'll leave that. So anything she did, just turn that on its head and then I'll do that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that emotion.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Well, Tara, thank you so much. This has been great. We will have to have you back and talk more about your stepmothers because it sounds like there's a lot of good stuff there. But tell us more about where folks can find you.
Yeah, definitely. So you can follow me on Instagram at Modern Mom Probs. I have a podcast named Modern Mom Probs and Cameron came on it. So you have to come and listen to that episode. Yes. You have to. I have a book called Modern Mom Probs, a survival guide for 21st century mothers. So follow me at all the things and I'm be happy to have you in my community.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Tara, thank you so much. And y'all go follow her. She's phenomenal. And I will be back in your ears next week.